Lieutenant Vincent Hayes was 3 blocks from home when he saw the flashing lights in his rearview mirror. He glanced down at his speedometer, 32 in a 35 zone. He checked his mirrors, made sure his seatbelt was fastened, and pulled over to the curb slowly and carefully. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and Vincent had just finished a hard workout at the gym. He was wearing athletic shorts, a faded t-shirt, and a baseball cap. His personal car, a well-maintained sedan, wasn't flashy, but it was nice. He'd saved for 2 years to buy it outright. No car payment hanging over his head every month felt good. Vincent kept his hands on the steering wheel where they could be seen. 18 years as a cop had taught him plenty, but the last 3 years as head of internal affairs had taught him even more. He knew exactly how these stops were supposed to go, and he had a sinking feeling about how this one was actually going to go. The officer who approached his window walked with an aggressive swagger, his hand resting near his weapon. Vincent noted that immediately. There was caution, which was reasonable and professional, and then there was this. This was something else. License and registration, the officer said. No greeting, no explanation of why Vincent had been pulled over. Just a demand, of course, officer, Vincent said calmly. My license is in my wallet in my back pocket, and my registration is in the glove compartment. I'm going to reach for them slowly. Keep your hands where I can see them, the officer snapped. Vincent moved deliberately, announcing each action. I'm reaching for my wallet now. Getting my license. He pulled it out, handed it over. Now I'm opening the glove compartment for my registration. The officer snatched the documents, examining them with narrowed eyes. Vincent could see his name tag now. Officer Mitchell. He'd heard that name before in complaints that had crossed his desk, but he couldn't quite place the details. Nice car, Mitchell said, and it wasn't a compliment. What kind of work do you do? Vincent felt his jaw tighten. That question had nothing to do with a traffic stop. Is there a problem with my vehicle, officer? I'll ask the questions. Where are you coming from? The gym. Where do you live? Just a few blocks from here. Mitchell walked around the car slowly, taking his time. Vincent watched in the side mirror. The officer stopped at the back, peering at the taillights. Then he returned to the window. You've got a broken taillight. That's a safety violation. Vincent knew for a fact that wasn't true. His car had passed inspection 3 weeks ago. But he also knew that arguing with an officer during a stop was pointless. It just gave them an excuse to escalate. I wasn't aware of that, Vincent said carefully. I'll get it fixed right away. Step out of the vehicle, please. Vincent's heart rate picked up. This was going exactly where he thought it would. May I ask why? Step out of the vehicle now. Vincent complied, moving slowly, keeping his hands visible. He was 6 feet tall and in good shape, but he made himself smaller, less threatening. It was something he'd learned to do over the years. A survival skill that shouldn't have been necessary, but was. Mitchell positioned himself between Vincent and the car. I'm going to need to search your vehicle. Do you have probable cause for a search, officer? Mitchell's face hardened. I smell marijuana. That's all the probable cause I need. There was no marijuana. Vincent didn't smoke, didn't drink much, kept his life clean because he had to. Because even as a lieutenant in the police department, even as the head of the division that investigated other officers, he knew he couldn't afford the same mistakes that white officers walked away from. There's no marijuana in my vehicle, Vincent said firmly but respectfully. I'll be the judge of that. Mitchell keyed his radio. This is Unit 247. I need backup for a vehicle search. Vincent stood on the sidewalk, hands at his sides, watching his car get surrounded like he was some kind of dangerous criminal. A few neighbors had come out onto their porches. He could see phones raised, recording. Good. Let them record. Another patrol car pulled up within minutes. The officer who got out was younger, maybe in his late 20s. His name tag read Henderson. He approached with the same aggressive energy as Mitchell, like they were responding to a violent crime instead of a supposed broken taillight. What have we got? Henderson asked. Possible narcotics, Mitchell said. I'm going to search the vehicle. Vincent watched them begin pulling apart his car. They opened every door, dumped out his gym bag onto the ground, rifled through his glove compartment. His water bottle, protein powder, workout log, all treated like evidence at a crime scene. A woman across the street called out, "Hey, what did he do?" "Ma'am, step back inside," Mitchell shouted. "This is police business. I have a right to stand on my own property," she replied. "And I have a right to record this." Mitchell looked like he wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. Instead, he turned his anger back on Vincent. "Where do you work?" Mitchell demanded again. "I already answered your questions, officer." "Answer again." Vincent took a slow breath. Every word out of his mouth right now mattered. Every movement could be misinterpreted. He'd investigated enough officer-involved incidents to know how quickly things could go wrong. How a man could end up shot because he reached for something or made a threatening move. "I work for the city," Vincent said simply. "Doing what?" "Administrative work." It wasn't a lie exactly. Internal affairs was administrative in nature. But Vincent wasn't about to explain his job title while standing on the side of the road being illegally searched. Mitchell pulled everything out of his trunk. Spare tire, jumper cables, and then his gym bag. The one he kept in there for emergency workouts when his schedule got crazy. The one that had his department credentials inside. Vincent saw the moment Mitchell unzipped the bag. Saw him freeze. Saw him pull out the badge and identification card that identified Vincent Hayes, Lieutenant Internal Affairs Division. Henderson noticed his partner's reaction and came around to look. Both officers went pale. The street went quiet except for the sound of traffic in the distance. Vincent waited. He'd let them come to him, let them realize exactly what they'd done and who they'd done it to. Mitchell's aggressive stance crumbled. His voice, so confident and harsh moments before, now came out shaky. "Sir, If I'd known you were on the job." Vincent cut him off with a voice that was quiet but carried the weight of 18 years of authority. "Does my badge change what just happened here? Would this stop be acceptable if I was just a regular citizen?" Mitchell opened his mouth, closed it again. Henderson took a step back toward his patrol car, looking like he wanted to disappear. "I pulled you over for a broken taillight," Mitchell tried. Vincent walked to the back of his car, pointed at the perfectly functioning lights. "Do these look broken to you, officer?" Mitchell didn't answer. "What was your probable cause for searching my vehicle?" "I smelled—" "No, you didn't. We both know that. So I'll ask again, what was your probable cause?" The neighbors were still recording. Vincent could hear their voices commenting on what they were seeing. "Good. Let this be documented. Let there be no question about what happened here." Vincent pulled out his phone and began taking notes. Date, time, location, both officers' badge numbers, which he made them repeat clearly. He photographed his intact taillights. He photographed his belongings scattered on the ground. "Sir, please," Mitchell said, and now he sounded desperate. "I made a mistake. I have a family." "You didn't mean what?" Vincent interrupted. "You didn't mean to profile me? You didn't mean to violate my constitutional rights? You didn't mean to conduct an illegal search?" He put his phone away. "I expect both of you to file complete and accurate reports about this stop. Every single detail. Do you understand?" Both officers nodded. Vincent began gathering his belongings, putting them back in his car. He took his time, making them watch, making them stand there in the discomfort of what they'd done. When everything was back in place, he got in his car. Mitchell approached the window one more time. "Lieutenant Hayes, please." "I'm sorry." Vincent looked at him through the window. "File your report, officer." Then he drove away, watching in his rearview mirror as both officers stood there, knowing that their careers had just taken a turn they'd never expected. Vincent didn't go straight home. He drove to a nearby parking lot and sat there for 20 minutes, his hands still gripping the steering wheel. The adrenaline that had kept him calm and focused during the stop was wearing off now, replaced by anger and something deeper. Exhaustion, maybe. Or just the weight of knowing that even after 18 years wearing a badge, even as the head of internal affairs, he still wasn't safe from this. His phone rang. It was his wife, Patricia. "Hey, honey, you almost home? Dinner's ready." Vincent took a breath, steadying his voice. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Something came up. You okay? You sound off." "I'm fine. Just had a long day. I'll tell you about it when I get there." When he walked through the front door, Patricia took one look at his face and knew. She'd been married to him for 15 years, had watched him come home from difficult cases, from internal investigations that tore apart officers' careers, from scenes that haunted him. "This was different. What happened?" she asked, leading him to the kitchen table. Vincent told her everything. The stop, the search, the way Mitchell had treated him like a suspect until he found the badge. Patricia listened quietly, her face growing more tense with each detail. They went through your things? On the side of the road? For a taillight that wasn't even broken? Her voice shook with anger. Vincent, this is exactly what we talk about. This is exactly what happens to— I know, he said quietly. Are you going to file a complaint? I already started documenting everything. I'll file official paperwork tomorrow. Patricia reached across the table and took his hand. I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad it didn't— She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. They both knew how these stops could end. How many names they'd heard on the news. How many families destroyed because a routine traffic stop turned deadly. That night, Vincent couldn't sleep. He lay awake thinking about Mitchell's face when he realized who Vincent was. The fear, the panic, the desperate apologies. But what stuck with Vincent most was what Mitchell had said. If I'd known you were on the job, if he'd known. As if the badge made the difference. As if Vincent's rights as a citizen only mattered because he happened to be a cop. The next morning, Vincent arrived at Internal Affairs headquarters at 7. His team was already there. He had 4 investigators working under him, all experienced, all people he trusted. When he called them into the conference room, they knew something serious was happening. I need to tell you something that happened yesterday, Vincent began. Then he walked them through the entire stop. His senior investigator, Tony Ramirez, a 20-year veteran with a reputation for being thorough and fair, looked furious. They searched your car? Without consent, without probable cause? Video evidence from neighbors shows the whole thing, Vincent said. I've already got copies coming. Who's the officer? Asked Christine Park, the newest member of the team, but sharp as they came. Mitchell. Derek Mitchell from the 9th Precinct. Tony's expression changed. Mitchell? I know that name. We've had complaints about him before. Pull his file, Vincent said. Pull everything. Every stop he's made in the last 3 years, every complaint, every use of force report. I want to see the pattern. You're opening a formal investigation? Christine asked. I'm doing exactly what I'd do if any citizen came to us with this complaint. The fact that it happened to me doesn't change the process. If anything, we need to be more careful, more thorough. People are going to be watching this closely. By noon, Mitchell's file was spread across the conference room table. It painted a disturbing picture. 7 complaints in the past 4 years, 4 for excessive force during traffic stops, 3 for discriminatory behavior. All of them had been investigated by his precinct captain and dismissed for lack of evidence or marked as unfounded. Vincent picked up one complaint from 8 months ago. A high school teacher named Robert Chen had been pulled over, ordered out of his car and handcuffed on the side of the road while his 7-year-old daughter watched from the back seat. Mitchell's reason. The air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror was suspicious. The complaint had been dismissed within a week. His precinct captain is Anthony Burke, Tony said, looking at the files. Burke was Mitchell's training officer back in the day. They're tight. That explains why these complaints went nowhere, Christine added. Burke protected him. Vincent felt his anger building, but he kept it controlled. Anger was useful if you channeled it properly. We're going to need to interview Mitchell and his partner. What was the other officer's name? Henderson. Kyle Henderson, also from the 9th Precinct. Schedule formal interviews with both of them. Make it clear this is an official internal affairs investigation. I want them on record. Tony hesitated. Vincent, you know the union is going to fight this hard. You're investigating one of their guys and you're the complainant. They're going to say you have a personal vendetta. Let them say it. We'll do this by the book, document everything, follow every procedure. When we're done, the evidence will speak for itself. 3 days later, Mitchell arrived for his interview with his union lawyer in tow. The lawyer was Robert Cranston, known for his aggressive defense of officers and his ability to find technicalities that got cases dismissed. Vincent had decided not to conduct the interview himself to avoid any claims of bias. Tony and Christine handled it while Vincent watched from an observation room. Mitchell looked like he hadn't slept in days. His uniform was neat, but his face was drawn, eyes red. He sat down across from Tony and Christine with the defeated posture of a man who knew he was in serious trouble. Officer Mitchell, you understand this is a formal internal affairs investigation regarding the traffic stop of Lieutenant Vincent Hayes on Tuesday afternoon? Tony began. Yes, sir. Walk us through what happened. Start from the beginning. Mitchell cleared his throat. I was on patrol in my assigned sector. I observed a vehicle with what appeared to be a broken taillight. I initiated a traffic stop following standard procedure. What made you think the taillight was broken? Christine asked. It looked like it wasn't functioning properly. But when Lieutenant Hayes pointed out that both taillights were working perfectly, you saw that, correct? Mitchell glanced at his lawyer. I may have been mistaken about the taillight. So you pulled over a citizen without valid cause? Tony pressed. I thought I had valid cause at the time. Let's move to the search. You stated in your preliminary report that you smelled marijuana coming from the vehicle. Is that correct? Yes. Officer Mitchell, Lieutenant Hayes, submitted to a voluntary drug test the same day as the stop. It came back completely clean. No marijuana, no drugs of any kind in his system. The vehicle was also processed. No marijuana residue, no drug paraphernalia, nothing. So I'll ask you again, did you actually smell marijuana? The room went silent. Mitchell looked at his lawyer again, who leaned over and whispered something. I believed I smelled something that could have been marijuana, Mitchell said finally. Could have been. That's your probable cause for a full vehicle search? I was acting in the interest of public safety. Christine leaned forward. Officer Mitchell, we've pulled your service record. You have 7 complaints for similar behavior. Traffic stops of minority drivers. Searches based on questionable probable cause, aggressive tactics. Can you explain this pattern? Those complaints were investigated and dismissed, Mitchell said, his voice rising slightly. I was cleared every time. Cleared by your precinct captain, who happens to be your former training officer and close friend, Tony said. That's going to be part of our investigation too. Mitchell's lawyer stood up. My client has cooperated fully. Unless you have specific charges you're planning to file, I think we're done here. We're done when the investigation is complete, Tony replied calmly. Officer Mitchell, you're suspended with pay pending the outcome of this investigation. Turn in your badge and weapon to your supervisor today. Mitchell's face went white. Suspended? For how long? As long as it takes. After Mitchell and his lawyer left, Vincent joined Tony and Christine in the interview room. He's lying, Christine said. About the marijuana, about the taillight, probably about half the things he said in there. Of course he is, Vincent replied. But we need more than my testimony and his lies. We need to show the pattern. Pull body cam footage from every stop he's made in the past 3 years. Compare his stop rates by race. Interview every person who filed a complaint that got dismissed. Tony nodded. This is going to get messy. The union will fight us. Burke will fight us. Mitchell has friends in that precinct. I know, Vincent said. But this isn't just about what happened to me. This is about every person Mitchell has pulled over. Every family he's traumatized, every complaint that got buried. We're going to shine a light on all of it. As Vincent drove home that evening, he thought about the teacher whose daughter had watched him get handcuffed. He thought about how many other people had been through the same thing and had no recourse, no voice, no power to demand accountability. That's what his badge really meant. Not that he was above the law or immune to discrimination, but that he had the power to do something about it. And he was going to use every bit of that power to make sure Mitchell never did this to anyone else again. 2 weeks into the investigation, Vincent's team had uncovered something much bigger than one bad traffic stop. The conference room looked like a detective's murder board with charts, photos, and statistics covering every wall. The numbers told a story that was impossible to ignore. Christine stood in front of a large display board, pointing to the data they'd compiled. Over the past 3 years, Mitchell has made 463 traffic stops. Of those stops, 312 were of Black or Latino drivers. That's 67%. What's the demographic breakdown of his patrol area? Vincent asked, though he already suspected the answer. 42% white, 31% black, 23% Latino, 4% other. Tony read from his notes. So he's stopping minorities at more than twice the rate you'd expect. Vincent stared at the numbers. Cold, hard data that showed exactly what he'd experienced wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern, a system, a way of operating that Mitchell had gotten away with for years. What about the stops that led to searches? Vincent asked. Christine flipped to another page. 89 searches total. 73 of those were minority drivers. And here's the thing that really stands out. His hit rate is terrible. Out of 89 searches, he only found contraband in 12 cases. That's a success rate of about 13%. That's significant, Tony said. It suggests he's fishing, searching people without real probable cause. and hoping to find something. Vincent walked closer to the board, studying the timeline. What about use of force incidents? 6 in 3 years. 5 involved minority suspects. 3 were during traffic stops that started with minor violations. In 2 cases, the suspects filed excessive force complaints that were dismissed by Captain Burke. Vincent felt the familiar anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice level. I want to talk to those people. Everyone who filed a complaint that got buried. We need their statements on record. Over the next week, Tony and Christine conducted interviews. Each story was different in its details, but the same in its essence. A man pulled over for driving too slow who ended up face down on the pavement. A woman stopped for a loud muffler who had her car torn apart on the side of the highway. A teenager pulled over on his way to work who was accused of having suspicious behavior because he looked nervous. The most heartbreaking interview came from a man named Robert Chen, the high school teacher whose daughter had watched him get handcuffed. Robert came to Internal Affairs headquarters on a Saturday morning, bringing his complaint file and his own documentation of the stop. I filed a complaint the next day, Robert told Vincent, who had decided to conduct this interview personally. I included photos showing my daughter crying in the back seat. I included statements from witnesses. I wrote everything down while it was fresh in my memory. And what happened? Vincent asked, though he'd already read the disposition in the file. Captain Burke called me in for an interview. Seemed sympathetic at first, said he took these matters seriously. Then he started asking me questions that made it seem like I was the problem. Was I combative with Officer Mitchell? Did I refuse to follow commands? Did I have any drugs in my system that might have affected my perception of events? Robert's hands clenched into fists. He made me feel like I was the one being investigated. How did the complaint get resolved? I got a letter 3 weeks later. Said the investigation found Mitchell acted appropriately, that he had reasonable suspicion for the stop and the handcuffing was for officer safety. They marked it unfounded. Robert looked directly at Vincent. My daughter had nightmares for months after that. She's 9 years old and she's terrified of police now. And nobody cared. Vincent made sure every word was documented, recorded, preserved. I care, Mr. Chen, and I promise you this time it won't get buried. After Robert left, Vincent sat alone in his office, staring at the growing mountain of evidence. This wasn't just about Mitchell anymore. It was about a system that had enabled him, protected him, allowed him to continue terrorizing citizens for years. His phone rang. It was Chief Raymond Walsh, the head of the entire police department. Vincent, we need to talk. My office, Monday morning, 8 o'clock. Yes, sir. And bring your full investigative file on the Mitchell case. All of it. Monday. Morning. Vincent walked into the chief's office carrying 2 thick folders. Chief Walsh was in his early 60s, a career cop who'd worked his way up from patrol. He had a reputation for being tough but fair, though Vincent knew he also valued loyalty and didn't like officers who made the department look bad. Captain Burke was already there, sitting in one of the chairs across from the chief's desk. He looked at Vincent with barely concealed hostility. Lieutenant Hayes, Chief Walsh began. Captain Burke has some concerns about your investigation into Officer Mitchell. I'm sure he does, Vincent said calmly, taking a seat. Burke leaned forward. This is a witch hunt, plain and simple. You got your feelings hurt during a traffic stop and now you're trying to destroy a good officer's career. Vincent kept his expression neutral. Is that what you think this is about? What else could it be? Mitchell made a mistake, sure. But you're blowing this up into something it's not. You've suspended him, you're interviewing every person who ever had a bad word to say about him. You're treating him like a criminal. He violated a citizen's constitutional rights, Vincent said. My rights, specifically. He conducted an illegal search based on false probable cause. That's not a mistake. That's a crime. One incident, Burke shot back. One questionable stop, and you're ready to throw away 10 years of service, Vincent? Opened the first folder and placed it on the chief's desk. It's not one incident. Officer Mitchell has a documented pattern of discriminatory policing going back 3 years. 463 traffic stops, 67% targeting minorities in an area that's only 54% minority population. 89 searches with a 13% success rate, suggesting he's searching without proper cause. 6 use of force incidents, 5 involving minorities, and 7 complaints that were all dismissed by Captain Burke without proper investigation. Burke's face reddened. Those complaints were investigated thoroughly. Really? Vincent opened the second folder. Robert Chen filed a complaint with photographs, witness statements, and a detailed written account. Your investigation consisted of interviewing Officer Mitchell, who denied everything, and then closing the case 3 weeks later as unfounded. No witness interviews, no review of body cam footage, no independent verification of anything. I talked to witnesses, Burke protested. According to your report, you interviewed Mitchell's partner, who works in the same precinct and has lunch with Mitchell every day. That's not an independent witness, Captain. That's covering for your guy. Chief Walsh held up his hand. Enough. Vincent, what are you recommending? Termination for Officer Mitchell. He's violated departmental policy, state law, and the constitutional rights of multiple citizens. He's a liability to this department and a danger to the community. That's excessive, Burke said quickly. He deserves retraining, maybe a suspension, but termination? Vincent turned to face Burke directly. Tell me something, Captain. If I wasn't a lieutenant, if I was just a regular citizen who came in here with this complaint, would you have dismissed it like all the others? Burke didn't answer. That's what I thought, Vincent said, and that's the problem. You've created a system where officers like Mitchell can violate rights without consequences because you protect them. You value loyalty over accountability. Chief Walsh was quiet. For a long moment, reading through the evidence Vincent had compiled. Finally, he looked up. Captain Burke, you're relieved of supervisory duties pending an investigation into your handling of complaints. Vincent, continue your investigation, but I want weekly reports on my desk. This goes all the way through proper channels, understood? Yes, sir, Vincent said. Burke stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. I've given 25 years to this department. And somewhere along the way, you forgot what you were supposed to be protecting, Chief Walsh said quietly. Dismissed, Captain. After Burke stormed out, the chief looked at Vincent with tired eyes. This is going to get ugly. The Union will fight you. Mitchell's friends on the force will make your life difficult. Are you prepared for that? Vincent thought about Robert Chen's daughter, about every person who'd been pulled over and searched, and humiliated for no reason except the color of their skin. He thought about how close his own stop had come to ending differently. I've been dealing with difficult my whole life, Chief. I can handle it. Good. Because we need to get this right. Not just for Mitchell, but for everyone watching to see if we actually hold our own accountable. Vincent left the chief's office knowing the real fight was just beginning. But for the first time since that traffic stop, he felt like maybe, just maybe, the system would work the way it was supposed to. The backlash started almost immediately. Within days of Captain Burke's suspension, Vincent started getting anonymous messages. Some were crude insults, others were thinly veiled threats. Someone keyed his personal car in the department parking lot. Officers he'd worked with for years suddenly had nothing to say to him in the hallways. Patricia noticed the change in him. He came home later, talked less, spent hours in his home office reviewing case files. One evening, she found him sitting in the dark, just staring out the window. They're calling me a traitor, he said quietly when she turned on the light. Officers I've known for a decade won't even make eye contact with me. There's a rumor going around that I'm trying to destroy the department from the inside. Patricia sat down next to him. Are you having second thoughts? About the investigation? No. About whether it's worth what it's costing? He rubbed his face with both hands. Every day, yeah. You're doing the right thing. The right thing is supposed to feel better than this. But Vincent kept pushing forward. The investigation had expanded beyond Mitchell to examine the entire complaint review process at the 9th Precinct. What they found was disturbing. Over a 5-year period, the precinct had received 63 complaints about officer conduct. Burke had dismissed 58 of them. The 5 that resulted in any discipline were all minor infractions like being late to work or improper uniform. Meanwhile, Kyle Henderson, Mitchell's partner from the traffic stop, had agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced punishment. His testimony painted a picture of a precinct culture where aggressive tactics against minority communities were not just tolerated but encouraged. Mitchell used to brag about it. Henderson told Vincent during a follow-up interview. He called it proactive policing. He'd say things like, "Gotta keep these neighborhoods in check," or "They need to know we're watching them." And Burke backed him up every time someone complained. "Did you ever speak up about it?" Vincent asked. Henderson looked ashamed. "No, I was new to the precinct, trying to fit in. And honestly, I was scared. Scared of being labeled a rat, scared of losing my job, scared of what would happen if I went against guys like Mitchell and Burke." "What changed?" "Watching what happened to you. Seeing how close that stop came to going really bad, and thinking about all the people who went through the same thing but couldn't fight back because they didn't have a badge." Henderson paused. "I've got a younger brother. He's 19, going to community college. If Mitchell pulled him over, my brother would have no power, no recourse." That realization hit me hard. Vincent's investigation caught the attention of local media. A reporter named Angela Martinez had been covering police accountability issues for years. When she heard about the case, she reached out to Vincent directly. "Lieutenant Hayes, I've obtained the body cam footage from 3 of Officer Mitchell's stops through a public records request," she said during their phone call. "What I'm seeing is disturbing. Would you be willing to comment?" Vincent knew this was a delicate situation. The case was still under investigation and he couldn't compromise its integrity. But the public had a right to know what was happening. "I can't comment on an ongoing investigation," he said carefully, "but I can tell you that Internal Affairs takes all complaints seriously, especially those involving constitutional violations." The story ran the following week. Angela's reporting was thorough and damning. She'd interviewed 4 of Mitchell's victims, obtained body cam footage showing his aggressive tactics, and compiled statistics showing the racial disparity in his stops. The article went viral on social media within hours. Suddenly, everyone was talking about it. Community groups organized protests outside the 9th Precinct. The mayor's office started getting calls demanding action. Other news outlets picked up the story. Vincent's traffic stop, which had seemed like a personal humiliation just weeks earlier, had become a catalyst for a broader conversation about policing. But with the attention came increased pressure. The police union held a press conference calling the investigation a politically motivated attack on hardworking officers. They accused Vincent of using his position to settle personal scores and demanded his removal from the case. Chief Walsh called Vincent into his office again. This time the mayor was there too. Mayor Lisa Rodriguez was in her 2nd term, known for supporting police but also for demanding accountability. "This situation is becoming a circus," the mayor said bluntly. "I've got community leaders demanding reform, the union threatening a vote of no confidence, and the media calling my office every hour. I need to know where this investigation stands." Vincent laid out the evidence methodically: the traffic stop data, the dismissed complaints, Burke's failure to properly investigate, Henderson's testimony about precinct culture. When he finished, the mayor was quiet for a long moment. "What are you recommending?" "Mitchell should be terminated and face potential criminal charges for civil rights violations. Burke should be demoted and removed from any supervisory role. The entire complaint review process needs to be reformed with independent oversight. The union will fight the termination," Chief Walsh said. "Let them fight it. We have the evidence." The mayor stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city. "If we do this, if we actually hold these officers fully accountable, it sets a precedent. Every complaint, every questionable stop, every use of force incident will be scrutinized more carefully." "That's exactly what should happen," Vincent said. She turned back to face him. "You understand that some officers will hate this? They'll see it as the department turning against them. The department isn't turning against good officers. It's turning against bad policing." "There's a difference," the mayor nodded slowly. "Proceed with your recommendations. But I want this done right. No procedural errors, no shortcuts. If we're going to fire a cop, the case needs to be airtight." 2 weeks later, the disciplinary hearing took place. Mitchell sat with his union lawyer and 2 union representatives. Vincent presented his findings to a review board consisting of the chief, 2 deputy chiefs, and the city's legal counsel. The evidence was overwhelming. Body cam footage showed Mitchell using aggressive tactics during routine stops. Data proved the racial disparity in his policing. Witness testimony from multiple victims established a pattern. Henderson's cooperation provided insider confirmation of the problematic precinct culture. Mitchell's lawyer tried to argue that his client was just following his training, that he was being made a scapegoat for broader departmental issues, that one bad stop shouldn't end a 10-year career. But the review board saw through it. After 3 hours of testimony and deliberation, Chief Walsh delivered the verdict. Officer Derek Mitchell, based on the evidence presented, you are hereby terminated from the police department effective immediately. You violated departmental policy, engaged in discriminatory policing, and conducted illegal searches of citizens. Your actions brought discredit to this department and violated the constitutional rights of the people we're sworn to protect. Mitchell's face went pale. His lawyer immediately announced they would appeal, but everyone in the room knew the decision would stand. Burke received a demotion back to patrol officer and a 60-day suspension without pay. It wasn't as severe as Vincent had hoped, but it was something. More importantly, the chief announced sweeping changes to the complaint review process, including independent civilian oversight and mandatory body cam review for all complaints. That evening, Vincent got a call from Robert Chen, the teacher whose daughter had been traumatized during Mitchell's stop. I saw the news, Robert said. I wanted to thank you, not just for what happened to me, but for all of us, for showing that the system can work when someone in power has the courage to use it. How's your daughter doing? Vincent asked. Better. We're working with a counselor. She's still scared, but we're talking about it now. And knowing that Mitchell can't do this to anyone else, that helps. After he hung up, Vincent sat in his office surrounded by the case files that had consumed his life for the past 2 months. The threatening messages, the cold shoulders from fellow officers, the stress on his family, all of it had been worth it for this moment. Tony knocked on his door. Some of us are going out for drinks to celebrate. You coming? Vincent smiled. Yeah, I'll be there in a few minutes. As he packed up his briefcase, his phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Proud of you. Come home soon. Vincent looked around his office one more time. Tomorrow there would be more cases to investigate, more complaints to review, more officers to hold accountable. The work was never finished. But tonight he'd take the win. Tonight he'd proven that badges don't place officers above the law. They make the responsibility to uphold it even greater, and that was worth fighting for. 6 months after Mitchell's termination, Vincent stood in front of 300 police officers at the department's mandatory training session. The auditorium was packed, and the energy in the room was mixed. Some officers sat with their arms crossed, clearly resentful. Others leaned forward, genuinely interested in what he had to say. Chief Walsh had asked Vincent to lead the new training program on constitutional policing and implicit bias. It wasn't a request Vincent could refuse, even though he knew it would make him even more unpopular with certain segments of the force. I'm going to tell you a story, Vincent began, his voice carrying through the room, about a day that changed everything for me, even though I've been a cop for 18 years. He told them about the traffic stop, about standing on the side of the road while his car was searched, about the fear he felt, even with a badge and 18 years of experience, about how Mitchell's tone changed the instant he found out Vincent was internal affairs. Here's the question I kept asking myself, Vincent said. Why did finding my badge change how I was treated? Why did Officer Mitchell suddenly become apologetic and scared when he realized I had power? The answer is simple and disturbing, because he knew what he'd done was wrong. He just didn't think there would be consequences. The room was completely silent now. Even the officers who came in with hostile attitudes were listening. We talk about the thin blue line like it's sacred, like loyalty to each other is the highest value in policing. But what happens when that loyalty protects officers who abuse their power? What happens when we stay silent, while our colleagues violate the rights of the people we swore to protect? Vincent paused, letting the questions hang in the air. We lose the trust of our communities. We lose our integrity. We become the problem instead of the solution. After the presentation, several younger officers approached him. One, a rookie named Danny Chen, who'd been on the force for less than a year, stayed until everyone else had left. Lieutenant Hayes, can I ask you something? Danny said nervously, Of course, I've seen things on patrol. Nothing as bad as what Mitchell did, but things that didn't feel right. Officers being rougher than necessary with suspects, making assumptions about people based on where they live or what they look like. I wanted to say something, but I'm new and I didn't want to be labeled a troublemaker. What should I do? Vincent looked at this young officer, seeing his own younger self in Danny's uncertain face. The hardest thing about being a good cop isn't dealing with criminals. It's standing up to bad cops. But here's what I learned. Silence is agreement. When you see something wrong and don't speak up, you're part of the problem. But what if speaking up cost me my career? What if staying silent cost someone their life? Vincent replied gently, I know it's not easy. But this job isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be right. Danny nodded slowly. Thank you, sir. That helps. The changes Vincent had pushed for were slowly taking root. The new Civilian Oversight Board was operational, reviewing every complaint with fresh eyes. Body camera footage was being audited regularly. Officers received quarterly training on de-escalation and bias awareness. And perhaps most importantly, complaints were no longer being dismissed without thorough investigation. The results were starting to show. Traffic stop data indicated that the racial disparity in stops had decreased by 20% across the department. Use of force incidents were down. Community trust, measured through surveys and town halls, was slowly improving, but not everyone was happy about it. Vincent still got hate mail occasionally. Some officers refused to work with him on joint investigations. There were whispers that he'd sold out the brotherhood of police officers. One afternoon, Vincent was having lunch at a diner near headquarters when a veteran officer named Frank Morrison slid into the booth across from him. Frank had been on the force for 28 years and was known as old school. You know what they call you at the 9th Precinct? Frank said without preamble. Internal Affairs Hayes, the cop who turned on his own. Vincent set down his sandwich. Is that what you think I did? Turned on my own. You ruined Mitchell's life, destroyed Burke's career, all because you got your feelings hurt during one traffic stop. Is that really what you think happened? Vincent asked calmly. One traffic stop? Mitchell made a mistake. We all make mistakes. Vincent leaned forward. Frank, I pulled Mitchell's record. You want to know what I found? Dozens of stops just like mine, a pattern of targeting minority drivers, illegal searches, dismissed complaints. That's not a mistake. That's a system failing to hold officers accountable. So we're supposed to throw away guys with years of service over a few complaints? We're supposed to protect and serve the community, all of it. Not just the people who look like us or make us comfortable. Vincent paused. Tell me something honestly. If Mitchell had pulled over your son the way he pulled me over, would you still call it just a mistake? Frank was quiet for a long moment. My son's white. Mitchell wouldn't have pulled him over. Exactly. And that's the problem. Frank left without saying anything else, but Vincent could see something had shifted in his expression. Maybe not agreement, but at least the beginning of understanding. 3 months later, Vincent received a letter that made him stop everything he was doing. It was from a college student named Jasmine Turner. She wrote about watching her father get pulled over and mistreated by police when she was 12 years old, about how that experience had made her afraid of law enforcement for years, about how she'd almost given up on the idea that police could be trusted. But then I read about what you did, she wrote, about how you used your position to demand accountability instead of protecting bad officers. It made me realize that change is possible, that there are good people in law enforcement who care about doing the right thing. Because of your example, I've decided to pursue a career in criminal justice. I want to be part of the solution just like you. Vincent read the letter 3 times, then pinned it to his office wall next to Robert Chen's quote about dignity. That evening, he drove past the spot where Mitchell had pulled him over. It looked different now somehow. Just a regular street corner, nothing special about it, but it had been the catalyst for everything that followed. His phone rang. It was Chief Walsh. Vincent, I wanted you to hear this directly from me. The mayor is creating a new position, Director of Police Accountability and Reform. It would oversee internal affairs, coordinate with the Civilian Oversight Board, and work on department-wide policy changes. She wants you for the job. Vincent thought about what accepting would mean. More visibility, more responsibility, more pushback from officers who resented change. But he also thought about Jasmine's letter, about Robert Chen's daughter slowly learning to trust police again, about young officers like Danny who needed someone to show them a better way. I'll take it, Vincent said. Good, because we've got a lot of work to do. A week later, Vincent was cleaning out his old office when he found the business card Mitchell had given him during the traffic stop. He stared at it for a moment. remembering the anger and humiliation he'd felt that day. Then he threw it in the trash. That chapter was over. Mitchell was gone, Burke was demoted, and the department was slowly changing. But Vincent knew the work was far from finished. There would be more complaints to investigate, more officers to hold accountable, more resistance to overcome. His desk phone rang. Another complaint, another investigation, another chance to get it right. Vincent picked up the phone. Internal Affairs, Lieutenant Hayes speaking. As he listened to the caller describe their experience, Vincent grabbed a notepad and started taking notes. The voice on the other end was shaky, uncertain, clearly afraid that nothing would come from the complaint. I want you to know something, Vincent said when the caller finished. I hear you. I believe you. And we're going to investigate this thoroughly. You did the right thing by calling. After he hung up, Vincent looked out his window at the city he'd sworn to protect. It wasn't perfect. The department wasn't perfect. He wasn't perfect. But they were trying, fighting, pushing for something better. And sometimes that was enough. Sometimes one person standing up and saying, "This isn't right," could start a chain reaction that changed everything. Vincent opened the new case file and got to work. There were people out there who needed someone to fight for them, to demand accountability, to prove that the system could work when good people refused to stay silent. He was going to be that person. For as long as it took, for as hard as it was, he was going to keep fighting, because that's what the badge really meant. Not power without accountability, not authority without responsibility, but a promise to serve everyone with dignity, to uphold the law even when it was difficult, and to stand up for what was right even when it cost him everything. And Vincent Hayes intended to keep that promise.